What if I told you that Amado might be watching Kashin Koji right now without him even knowing that it's happening? We've seen him spy through Kawaki's eyes. We've seen him spy through Delta's eyes. No moments are private. But here's the thing, Kashin Koji's body, it was also built and altered by Amado. And if that means what I think it means, the stakes for Kashin Koji's survival and Boruto Two Blue Vortex, they have just skyrocketed in ways that I don't think that enough people are talking about. This isn't just about surveillance. This could be the start of a silent chess game between the man who constructed his body and the man who's been avoiding him ever since unlocking the godlike shinjutsu known as 10 Directions. And trust me, when Amado starts playing chess now, there are going to be pieces that are sacrificed. Who those sacrifices might be, we don't necessarily know, but one thing is for certain, that in today's newest Naruto Explained video, your OBC, your original Boruto chief, obviously that being me, is going to break down for you why the stakes between Amado versus Kashin Koji, they just went up big time. So let's rewind to Boruto Naruto Next Generations, back when the car organization was still viewed as a threat and it was in the peak of any type of chaos that it was causing in the narrative. Remember that moment when Kashin Koji was about to fight Delta? Amado just casually steps in. He's like, hey, Kashin Koji, I got this, fam. Kashin Koji's like, yo, what are you talking about? You can't fight. And then Amado says, go to sleep, Delta. Delta goes to sleep. Amado standing over her. Koji first started looking like, is this going to be some Diddy time? And then all of a sudden it hits him and he's like, wait a second. Does he have something like that inside of me? Can he shut me down as well? That trademark skepticism that Kashin Koji showed, that pragmatism, it's something that never left my mind as a reader. That was our first hint. At the time, it kind of felt like it might be something random, but it was a seed planted that Kashin Koji knew that Amado could have hidden features inside of him that he wouldn't know about. Again, he's a clone made from Jiraiya. His entire body's been remodeled with ninja tech by Amado. If Amado put a self-destruct button inside of Kashin Koji, he would never know it. He would just go splat splat and then that would be it. Later on in Boruto Part 1, in that same arc, just a few chapters later, it's outright stated, every cyborg in Kara had their entire body altered by Amado. That's Delta, that's Kawaki, that's Code, that's Boro, Victor, and obviously Kashin Koji. That isn't speculation, it's reinforced by what we've seen Amado do. Delta, Amado watches through her eyes when she tends to Kawaki in Two Blue Vortex after Jura put that boy to sleep. Kawaki, he not only spies on him, but he also actively limited Kawaki's powers without Kawaki even realizing it when he gave him the Karma Seal again. But the fact of the matter is, Amado was able to look through his eyes. He has violated the bodies of every car in a member. That's the whole reason why Ada absolutely hates him. Code flat out asks, do you hate Amado because he messed with your body? And that was part of the reason why she hates the guy. The biggest reason obviously being the fact that due to the shinjutsu he put in her, she can't experience true love, but we'll touch on that in the Ada video essay that I'm saving for the fourth quarter on this channel. So, I said to say this. Most recently, in chapter 24 of Boruto Two Blue Vortex, Amado is again shown looking through Kawaki's perspective. This time he's got an audience. Him and Sumire sitting there with some figurative popcorn watching the whole fight. That is a pattern, and it is good storytelling. Patterns in stories are not accidents. One time is a moment where when you read it, you say, okay, I don't know if necessarily the author had the intention to do this, but hey, that's accidental brilliance there. But when you see it repeatedly, that becomes a pattern. And when it's a pattern, it is intentional. Just like with the thumbnails, if you see me consistently poking fun at characters, it's because I'm doing it on purpose. Granted, I make sure that it reflects the video topic, not necessarily my stance on the topic, but it's a intentional thing. It's the same thing with writing. So this brings me to the next part. Why should Kashin Koji be considered next? So I'll answer that question by asking you a big question. Why would Amado start looking through Kashin Koji's eyes right now? I want you to sit there and think about that for a second. So here's the answer. First, it's all about timing. The last time we saw Amado looking through Kawaki's eyes before this new chapter, he voiced suspicion that Kashin Koji might still be alive. That alone, it is telling. Amado has a loose end with Kashin Koji. And Amado, somebody that we know doesn't like loose ends. He sent Kashin Koji on that suicide mission in order to have him taken down. He systematically was taking down the car organization. Victor, he framed him. Victor got killed. Boro was set up. Boro got killed. Granted, that was more of a Jigen move, but it's something you can argue Amado likely calculated for. Delta, he shut her down and he remodeled the last surviving clone body. Kashin Koji, he was pretty sure that Kashin Koji died in the Ishiki battle and Jigen died when Kashin Koji killed him. Everything that he was doing was setting the stage for his own plans to be put into effect. This is a loose end from way back in part 1 that he now has to deal with. Now, the second thing is that Kashin Koji, he's been avoiding Amado entirely since unlocking his Shinjutsu 10 directions. If you recall, Ishiki theorized that Kashin Koji would be that dog that goes back to his master. That didn't happen. Kashin Koji had a reason for it. This could mean that Kashin Koji suspects Amado's methods and he doesn't want to be pulled into his schemes for whatever reason. But there's a catch now. If we assume that Amado has already embedded surveillance into Kashin Koji's body from the car days, then Kashin Koji's avoidance means nothing. Amado could bypass it entirely. Now, if it turns out that only Delta and Kawaki have surveillance inside their eyes, that's going to make that whole Akibi is Kawaki's mom theory absolutely skyrocket, because that's going to be something unique to those two car inner members. That obviously being Kawaki, who was raised by Kara, and Akibi, who has her clone Delta. So I say that to say this. This is the third thing, the Boruto timeline shift. Boruto's confrontation with Kawaki about his limiters being changed and Kawaki going to get those limiters removed. That conversation, which wasn't in the original timeline, it could push Amado to act in an earlier method, perhaps in a way that Kashin Koji never foresaw, perhaps even seemingly preemptively spying on Kashin Koji before he can even make his own moves. And now we know that Kashin Koji can't just flip a switch and activate 10 directions. That could be huge. Koji wouldn't see it coming because his own plan never accounted for Boruto rewriting the timeline. And that brings me to this silent chess game, this cold war between Kashin Koji and Amado. If Amado starts spying on Koji, we're looking at a silent war, a mental battle that is fought between two people in the shadows, somebody that we know was very close to Amado. They were confidants at one time. They worked together to undermine Jigen. Kashin Koji, the clone of Jiraiya, now armed with a divine Shinjutsu in 10 directions, deliberately keeping his distance from Amado, possibly to avoid becoming a pawn or something else. On the other side, we got Amado, the manipulative genius who loves creating problems that only he can solve so he can take credit. A man who's never played a fair game in his life. Every encounter he's had with somebody, Amado's basically had most of the cards in his favor. There were some things that were outside his control, but even then, it was calculated risk. This isn't the type of conflict you see out in the open. It's a cold war, each side trying to outmaneuver the other without tipping their hand. And if Amado has eyes inside of Koji, that war has already been tilted in his favor. Koji's strategies, safe houses, and even alliances, they could be compromised instantly. This is why this should be seen as a nerve-wracking experience for you as a fan. Kashin Koji's entire advantage has been mystery. He survived because no one knows that he's still alive and where he's been since the end of part 1. Kashin Koji isn't on a milk carton, his name's written on a tombstone. Everyone thinks that he's dead. If Amado takes that away, Koji becomes exposed, which means he's now vulnerable. And remember, Amado isn't above using information to manufacture a crisis. He'll set up the board, he'll cause chaos, and then he'll swoop in, offering the only solution. If he has the access to Koji's perspective, he could trigger a whole chain of events that forces Koji out of hiding or into a trap, and Koji wouldn't even realize it until it was way too late. And this hits even harder when you look at the Shinto parallels. Yes, Professor Naruto explained it's going to talk some Shinto. So here's something you might not have thought about. The dynamic between Amado and Kashin Koji may actually echo relationships from Shinto mythology. In Shinto stories, we often see two archetypes that are often clashing: the seer or the prophet. Someone who can perceive the divine will, or they can glimpse into the future, often standing apart with worldly schemes. Then you have the schemer, the trickster. Longtime viewers of the channel know that I've been saying for years Amado reminds me of an Ameno Jaku. If you don't know what that is, you really need to look that up and then go reread the scene when Amado is telling Kawaki about the power that is still housed inside of him by Ishiki. This is a figure who manipulates events, bends rules, and shapes the flow of fate for their own ends, this being the schemer or the trickster. Kashin Koji with the Shinjutsu 10 directions now fits into that seer role. And Buddhist influenced Shinto interpretations, 10 directions is tied to the ability to perceive all realms, past, present, and future, a trait linked to deities like Onikushi, who was known for his wisdom, foresight, and ability to navigate both the mortal and the divine worlds. Amado, on the other hand, he embodies the traits of the trickster manipulator archetype, and Shinto will use a famous character for this. Not necessarily Inari, the rice god, and one of the foxes, but we can use a character in Susanoo who Ikimoto's used a few times, namely with Damon. So the storm god, in order to disrupt through cunning and cause chaos, if there was some type of turbulence, the storm god Susanoo was likely in that situation. In darker readings, this role, it can take on the tone of a shadowy advisor who orchestrates problems only to later claim credit for fixing them, which is what Amado's done. Here's the fascinating part. In Shinto myths, when the seer and the trickster collide, the outcome often hinges on who can best adapt to the other's methods. The seer must foresee events, but also not be in a position where they fail to anticipate the trickster's willingness to create entirely new scenarios. If Amado learns what 10 directions is and how it works, that's a problem. Likewise, the trickster might be able to manipulate the board, but the seer can occasionally see through the deception before the final move, which means Amado cannot get too arrogant. So we're seeing Kashin Koji and Amado's greatest weaknesses potentially being put against each other in this cold war that they have. That's what makes this potential spying situation dangerous for Koji. Even if he can glimpse future outcomes, Amado's manipulations, they might change the path entirely, rendering that foresight less effective. And Kashin Koji warned Boruto, if that happens, everything I saw is thrown away. It makes it a lot harder to plan. In mythological terms, it's like trying to predict the tide when someone upstream is suddenly throwing rocks into a river. Think about that. I'm going to repeat it. It's like trying to predict the tide when someone is upstream suddenly throwing all these rocks into a river. In Boruto Two Blue Vortex, that means Kashin Koji's divine perception could be blindsided by Amado's willingness to rewrite the rules of the game itself, because Amado has loyalty to only one thing: reviving his daughter and nothing else. This also brings me to how this raises the stakes and why from a storytelling perspective it has impact. So you might ask, why does this matter for Two Blue Vortex as a whole? Well, it's all about raising the stakes. Longtime viewers of the channel, you've heard me say raise the stakes a lot, but we have some new viewers on the channel, so allow me to explain what I mean. So a good story thrives when the danger grows, not just physically, but also strategically. If Kashin Koji, one of the few wild cards left in the series, is suddenly compromised, it means that the safe zones, they disappear. It means that the margin for error, it shrinks, and it forces our characters to take bigger risks because the enemy could be listening at any moment. Raising the stakes keeps the audience glued to the screen, especially when there's dramatic irony where we know it's happening, but a character like Kashin Koji doesn't. It makes every decision matter even more. Every betrayal will now hit harder. Every victory is going to feel more earned. If Amado is truly in possession of this level of access, then Two Blue Vortex, it isn't just about defeating Jura or Code or seeing what happens with Kawaki anymore. It becomes a story about the survival in a world where even your own eyes might be reporting to someone else. And in that kind of world, for someone like Kashin Koji, trust becomes the rarest source of them all. Is Amado already watching Kashin Koji, or is he waiting for the perfect moment to make his move? In a series where gods have descended upon the earth and time itself is something that is always changing, maybe the most dangerous power of them all isn't Shinjutsu after all. Maybe, just maybe, it's information gained from technology, which that kind of goes back to what we were told and what we were shown in the first part of Boruto. Where does science fit in a world of shinobi? Ninjutsu versus technology is right at our doorstep in terms of conflict. Ninjutsu, Kashin Koji. Technology, Amado's ninja tech. All leading to that moment where Kawaki says that the age of shinobi is over. Obviously, if you enjoyed this video breakdown, consider subscribing, clicking here on the left to check out this new Naruto Explained video, or click here on the right to check out videos from my other two anime channels where I talk about non-Naruto content.